Every year, extreme weather events and outdated infrastructure leave hundreds of thousands of Poles without power in their homes. It's not just an inconvenience, it's a huge problem.
Power outages and difficulties on the roads. More than 11,000 customers were left without electricity.
An hour with a smartphone flashlight is no big deal, but what if the outage lasts several hours or even a few days? A fridge packed to the brim after a big shopping trip stops being a joy when everything inside could go bad. Most power outages happen during autumn and winter storms, right in the middle of the heating season. And what does it matter if you have a gas or EcoP coal furnace at home, if without electricity for the pump and controller, it won't even start? The router goes silent, cutting you off from work and the world, and if you live outside the city, you might also lose access to running water because the hydrofor stops working. In such moments, technology comes into play, technology that camper enthusiasts and off-grid living fans are willing to pay big money for. Here is Bluetti Elite 300. The manufacturer claims that this is the world's smallest power station with a capacity exceeding 3 kWh, which has also been officially certified by the authorities. Let me emphasize, in the world. Packing that much energy into a 26-kilogram box is undoubtedly an engineering feat, but its biggest advantage isn't its size, it's how it manages energy. Many stations on the market can quietly drain their batteries even when absolutely nothing is connected to them. Here, such advanced converters have been used that the phenomenon of pointless energy loss has been reduced to a minimum. Losses during conversion are one thing, but the safety of your devices is what really matters. You probably know that cheap construction generators not only have terrible voltage stabilization, but most importantly, they don't generate a pure sine wave and lack a permanent grounding of the working neutral. Connecting a modern gas furnace with a flame ionization sensor to something like that is a guaranteed ignition failure or damage to the delicate controller. A TV or computer worth several thousand zlotys might not survive that either. The Bluetti station guarantees an almost perfect sine wave, and on the side of the casing it even has a grounding connector, specifically for home installations. There are no exhaust fumes, no need to store full canisters at home, and you can keep this station under your desk as a UPS power supply. Well, with the difference being that a standard UPS will keep a powerful workstation running for only a few minutes, while the Elite 300 model can handle a several hundred-watt load for several hours. It's like an almost endless power bank even for bigger gadgets. You can take it camping, to your summer house, or use it as the main power supply in a camper. It also has a solar panel input supporting up to 1,200 watts. I don't have such a big solar farm, but I do have 500 watts in a neat small suitcase, which not only charges this station successfully, but also powers my computer when I set them up on my balcony and I live in an apartment building. This equipment isn't cheap, but in the off-grid community, this model is extremely popular for a reason. It's definitely heavy, yes, but modern, safe cells, fast charging, pure sine wave, and sophisticated electronics make this a power bank for the toughest situations, ready to safely power even the most delicate electronics. This is Paweł, and you're watching the Tech Maniac HD channel. Let's start the test. Before starting the load tests, let's set the boundary parameters. Elite 300 has a continuous power output of 2,400 watts and a capacity of 3,014 watt-hours. The station has what is called a peak power of as much as 4,800 watts. From a physical point of view, it's a powerful split-second surge of starting current, absolutely necessary when starting up old compressors, grinders, or construction equipment. However, the station has one more independent ace up its sleeve, the powerlifting mode, which is manually activated in the app. It is used to power devices with a purely resistive nature, such as kettles or heaters with a rated power exceeding 2,400 watts. The station artificially and safely lowers the output voltage. The heating element simply gets fewer volts, heats up more slowly, but the device works without tripping the circuit breakers. And here's a very important note. So, use this consciously and only for resistive heating elements. Under no circumstances should you use this mode with modern electronics, and especially not with the induction motors of pumps and power tools, because the voltage drop can simply melt their windings. By default, this mode is of course turned off, which ensures a safe and stable 230V for everyday use. But in case of extreme need, the option to power heavy household appliances is definitely available here. The biggest advantage of this station is not its capacity, but how it handles energy losses. Why does that matter? Let me explain. When you turn on the inverter, even without any load connected, the device has to keep its systems ready and maintain the conversion to 230V. In many stations on the market, this costs from 40 up to even 60W of energy. That's an absolutely massive loss. The Elite 300 is 2 to 3 times more energy efficient in this regard. We're talking about just 19W to maintain power in the sockets. From an engineering standpoint, that's absolutely outstanding efficiency. The problem is that not many people know that every inverter has some losses, but here independent load tests show a premium class result. The inverter efficiency in this device is an impressive 93%, which means that out of the stored 3 kWh, you'll effectively get as much as 2,810 Wh of pure energy. On the other hand, using only the USB ports lowers the inverter's own consumption to a mere 4W, and to prevent the battery from being drained just by forgetting, the manufacturer has hidden the AC Eco and DC Eco options in the settings. That's your safety fuse. If the station detects that the connected device has long been fully charged or is no longer in use, and for the time specified in the app it draws less than the value you enter here, for example, 10W, it will absolutely cut off the power. No more pointless battery drain throughout the night. Awesome. Let's verify then how Bluetti performs as a UPS or power bank for such a large computer. So, I'm connecting my main workstation to the Elite 300, a 16-core Ryzen 9 5950X processor, 64GB of RAM, a 24GB W7900 XTX graphics card, 7 SSD drives, and a fractal design case, the torrent case, and a 32-inch 4K monitor along with a 27-inch 240Hz OLED gaming monitor. Such a monstrous setup, even at idle, consumes between 230 and 240W. Together with the station's own power draw, that's about 250W. Without any additional load and with the battery at 100%, the Bluetti will keep this entire powerful setup running for 12 to 13 hours. However, when you start a game, the whole setup consumes about 600W. It could actually go up to 750, but I use the graphics card in silent and power saving mode. By sliding this little switch here to performance mode, the graphics card alone consumes between 450 and 500W, but that's a bit pointless. Anyway, if the power went out in my neighborhood, the Elite 300 would keep this nice gaming session going for a full 5 hours, while also protecting the equipment as a brilliant UPS backup power supply with a response time of less than 10 milliseconds. Just see for yourself how it works. The computer is connected to the station, yes, but the station is now plugged into a wall socket. I unplug the power cord, and what happens? The computer and monitors are still running. Of course, the computer example only applies to a minority, but all of us need to eat, so let's move on to a more down-to-earth topic. Here's my 11-year-old Bosch refrigerator consuming 4.33 kWh per week. That's not much at all, but I also don't keep it open all the time, and I defrosted it a week ago. Anyway, that comes out to just 618 watts per day. On average, that's about 26W of continuous power. Let's add the inverter, which uses another 19 watts, and together we get about 45 watts of constant draw. How long will that last in practice? Well, of course, I had to check. I charged the station to 100%, turned on the inverter, and switched the fridge and computer from the wall socket to the Bluetti. The adapter you see here doesn't get in the way at all, and that big device from TP-Link is a smart socket. I'll connect it to get an additional, more accurate reading of the energy consumed by the fridge. Our test officially starts on May 17th at 5:20 p.m. Every time I entered the kitchen, I monitored the state of the device, but I won't bore you here with dozens of recordings. On May 19th, shortly after 3 p.m., the battery level was at 26%. On May 20th, at 8 a.m., the meter still shows 3%. We can see that the fridge is currently drawing about 23 watts. With this load, the energy should last for just under an hour and a half. And my friends, we finally managed to drain it to zero. Interestingly, even though the battery is discharged, the station's screen still works. It's exactly 10 a.m., so what's the final verdict? Well, the Bluetti station was able to keep my fridge running for an impressive 64.5 hours. Almost 3 days, and that's without any help from solar panels. I have to admit, during the test I expected a shorter runtime because during the day when I opened the fridge or freezer, the power consumption increased and the estimated runtime in the app as well as on the station's screen dropped drastically. However, at night, when no one was opening it, the temperature inside stabilized and the runtime clearly increased. Okay, but let's assume for a moment that you're considering buying some other power station without checking its efficiency at all, and you're only looking at the lowest price. Let's do a side exercise and look at a specific example, for instance, this Fossibot. A nice-looking station with noticeably higher capacity in the specifications. It's true that it also has much larger overall size, but even so, it still seems like a tempting alternative. After all, 800 watt-hours more on paper is really tempting, but don't be fooled by the numbers alone. This model, when you turn on the outlets with absolutely no load, consumes from 40 to 45 watts. As you already know, Bluetti uses only 18 watts for the same thing. This means that despite having a bigger battery on paper, in reality it will just keep your equipment running for a shorter time. Calculating this mathematically, since my fridge ran for over 64 hours on the much bigger Fossibot with higher cell capacity, it would actually run, get this, 10 hours less. Surprising, right? So if some clueless friend tells you that he saw a much cheaper station with the same or even bigger capacity at Biedronka or on AliExpress, you can just sum it up for him quickly. So, my dear friends, as you can see, cell capacity is one thing, but how sophisticated electronics can respect that energy and not waste it is a completely different story. A 3 kWh reserve also allows for emergency use of heavier household appliances. You can easily do 3 to 4 full laundry cycles with this, which can be convenient during a prolonged outage. Just a reminder, with household appliances, including the washing machine or refrigerator, you should absolutely not use the powerlifting mode. The default settings and pure 230V sine wave work perfectly here. And it's great that the voltage converter only uses 19W here, and although that's an absolutely excellent result compared to the competition, when connecting devices with low power consumption, these losses are still quite noticeable. And after all, today most devices can be powered directly from USB, especially these here, which have 100 and 140W of power respectively. Bypassing the 230V socket, you completely avoid the inverter and the absurd double power conversion. Take a look at how it works in practice. The internal battery of the station operates at a voltage of about 50V, and when you turn on the sockets, the Bluetti inverter first has to convert it to 230V AC. Then you plug in your laptop charger there, which again has to convert the already generated 230V to 20V DC. This creates ridiculously unnecessary losses. Who needs this and what for? Maintaining the AC sockets consumes 19W, while powering the USB ports with DC uses only 4W. The laptop charger itself generates another 10W of losses during its own conversion. It would be better to skip it entirely. By plugging your device directly into the Type-C socket, you eliminate all these losses at the source. But what if you have an older laptop that doesn't charge via USB at all? Don't worry, I'm not telling you to buy new equipment for 20,000 zlotys just to take it camping. I've been using adapters for years that allow you to connect any laptop to a USB Type-C cable. Carrying around a big dedicated power brick is just a waste of space and extra weight. And why do that when you can charge your phone, console, and computer with USB? For older laptops, a simple adapter is enough. I'll leave links to such adapters in the description. They do exactly what they're supposed to do, and you save the station's precious energy and don't have to carry that awkward junk everywhere. On the other hand, for van life and off-grid fans, there's another ace hidden here in the DC section. By activating this circuit, you not only turn on 4 USB ports, but also the entire 12V panel. Here you have a standard cigarette lighter socket with 120W power. Perfect for travel fridges or air pumps for mattresses, but next to it hides a real beast, a high-current XT90 port. It provides up to 30A, which is 360W of pure DC power. You can connect professional Webasto heating directly to it, or large compressor fridges. This way, you completely avoid the 19W loss on the inverter, and you don't have to worry about blown fuses, as often happens with regular car plugs. Yes, keeping all these sockets powered still only takes 4W. And since we've already discussed the DC sockets that supply power to external devices, it's time to turn the situation around. We're talking about the DC input, which allows you to charge the station itself. In other words, let's move on to solar panels. The set can be complemented with an optional foldable SORA 500 solar panel. Let me point out right away that this is not a cheap toy, because we're talking about equipment that costs over 3,000 zlotys. Of course, it's sold separately, but in return, you get a neat little suitcase that practically takes up no space, and once unfolded, it's ready to pump 0.5 kWh of clean energy into the system. Initially, I said I set it up on my apartment balcony with just a button press. Now, let's debunk a major myth about using panels behind glass. My balcony is, of course, glazed, which on one hand protects the panel perfectly from any wind. But while an ordinary thin pane of glass blocks about 10 to 15% of the full solar spectrum, my 10 mm sheet of tempered glass limits the panel's capabilities even more. Although, it's not even the glass that's the biggest problem here. The real efficiency killer is the metal railing here, which casts a shadow on the panel no matter the position of the sun. The brutal truth is that covering even just 5% of the panel doesn't mean the power drops by only 5%. Something like that could be tolerated. Standard panels react terribly even to a little bit of shade, cutting off a significant part and sometimes even all of the produced energy. Take a look at this animation. Scary, isn't it? Fortunately, SORA 500 is an innovative product. It has what's called bypass diodes, which save the day and disconnect only the directly shaded sections. And although the harsh shadow pattern from the balcony posts still completely cuts off individual rows of cells, the panel still generates surprisingly large amounts of energy. By the way, I recorded a few shots with my smartphone to show exactly what it looks like in practice. Take a look for yourself.
It's after 8 a.m. The sun is over there. We have full shade here. However, even though the panels are in the shade on the balcony, they're still generating up to 44 or 45 watts at this moment. You can see where the sun is.
Well, actually, it's gone behind the clouds again.
It's behind the clouds. Even though it's behind the clouds, we're still in the shade. 43 watts of generated energy on the balcony right now.
Like I said, at 8 in the morning.
And here is the west side. It's still before noon. The sun hasn't fully hit the panels yet.
The shadow basically ends there. Here, of course, there's shade. But I can already see that the charging is at 69 watts.
Even in such totally silly conditions where it practically shouldn't work at all. Yeah, well, it's a nice sunny day. A little bit of cloudiness. And like I said, the shadow is ending. And here it's almost coming in.
It should be on the panels soon. We'll see in a moment. The sun is already partially on the panels. Here you can see it comes to about here. Well, now the shadow has appeared again.
Unfortunately, but it's showing 104 watts.
It'll probably go up in a moment, because I see 110, 111.
The sun is shining a little bit stronger again. It's kind of a partly sunny, partly cloudy day. But you see, even in these conditions, we have 110 watts at this moment.
We see the sun hidden behind the clouds.
They're not too thick. And right now we have about 162, 160 watts.
It fluctuates based on intensity, sometimes reaching 150.
It drops a little. Now I think the sun is
coming through the clouds a little again.
Oh, 100.
120, 2 p.m. And here we see charging at around 180 watts. It shows 181, and now almost all the panels are exposed. Of course, not counting the big shadow that's falling there, here, there, from those railings.
But it's basically full sun. And now,
when the shadow isn't hitting it so hard, and it isn't blocking most of it or even part of it.
You see, it's about 220, because just a moment ago it was 219 watts of charging.
That's when it's really nice, sunny, normal.
On a cloudless day.
So even on a balcony you can
get something decent out of it.
Well, of course, I would prefer the full 500 watts, and you can definitely get that value by setting up this kit on an open lawn. Unfortunately, on my balcony, I don't have that possibility. Although the panel is fairly portable, at 14 kilograms you can't really say it's light. Plus, unfolding it leaves a lot to be desired. The panels are super thin, which is of course an advantage of the kit, but because of that, the whole thing is flimsy and gives the impression of being almost a bit cardboard-like. When the panel is fully unfolded, it's a real giant. It's over 2.5 meters long and more than 1.3 meters wide. I'll be honest, Unfolding and positioning this on your own on a cramped balcony is at least a hassle. It will definitely be easier in an open space, but on a windy day, it's probably best to skip it. The SORA 500 has an IP67 waterproof certification, so rain doesn't affect it at all, but the integrated cable that comes with it is only 1.5 meters long. On the other hand, the station itself is absolutely not waterproof. The short cable forces you to leave the device dangerously close to the panels, so it may turn out that you'll simply have to buy a longer cable. Inside, the Elite 300 uses lithium iron phosphate cells, which are much safer than typical smartphone batteries. Bluetti claims over 6,000 cycles before the capacity drops to 80%. What does that even mean? Well, a standard smartphone battery degrades after about 500 cycles. With 6,000 cycles, you could fully discharge and recharge the station every day for over 16 years. It would still retain 80% of its original capacity with such a lifespan. The only thing you should really worry about is calendar aging. A cell ages over time, whether you use it or it just sits in a closet. The conclusion is simple. If you buy this station, just use it and don't hold back. And if you have solar panels, charge it to power your home. Now let's debunk the biggest myth often repeated on forums. Should you limit the station's charging to 80% in the app like you do with smartphones? The answer is simple. Absolutely not. Lithium iron phosphate cells, unlike those in phones, love to be fully charged. They have such a flat voltage curve that the internal BMS system actually needs to reach 100% from time to time to calibrate properly. If you keep blocking charging at 80% all the time, the system will eventually get confused and the station will shut down, even though the screen will still show a reserve. In that case, why did the manufacturer add a charging limit in the app? Well, it makes sense, but only in strictly defined scenarios. On phones, we should basically always use such an option. But in the case of the Bluetti Elite 300 only if you have the station plugged into the socket permanently 24 hours a day, treating it as an emergency UPS under your desk or when you're simply storing it, keeping it at 100% for years without any charge cycles. It slightly accelerates calendar aging. In any other case, whether you're out in the field or using solar panels, charge this device fully. Alright then, but what's the most convenient way to recharge while on the road? You can do it with a cigarette lighter cable, for example, 120W in the case of passenger cars, or 240W in trucks or RVs. It may not be a fast option, but it's just right for a long trip. I'll leave a link to such an adapter in the description. Of course, if you're building a serious campervan for expeditions, it's worth investing in dedicated chargers that connect directly to the alternator, capable of delivering energy with a huge current. Most often, though, you'll be plugging it into a regular wall socket, and that's where the app comes into play. By default, you'll find in it 3 standard charging speed modes, silent mode at 800 watts. Standard at 1200W and turbo, which charges the station with a powerful 2300W, which means that charging from 0 to 80% takes only 78 minutes. There's also a hidden professional mode, which requires unlocking with a PIN code. I'll save you the trouble of searching. You just enter 8 8s. Despite the name, this mode doesn't actually make the station suddenly charge fully in 10 minutes. The maximum limit is still 2300W, which means 10A. This mode simply gives you manual control over the current, with increments of 1A. This option can be an absolute lifesaver at campgrounds, where power pedestals often have low-capacity breakers. For example, at 4 or 6A, you then set a hard limit in the app, and you can be sure that you won't be constantly tripping the breakers there. While we're still on the topic of AC input, you've probably noticed this small metal socket here. It's used for grounding. Since the station can serve as a 24-hour home UPS, the manufacturer made this possible. Physical and safe grounding of the device. During normal operation, you'll hear the fans. Yes, this is not a completely silent device, but with a small load, it generates less noise than a refrigerator compressor. Under heavier load, it sounds like this. Like most laptops with the fans at medium speed. Anyway, listen for yourselves.
I paused the music to check how loud the fans are. Here, you can also see that when the fan icon appears on the screen, it means it's running. However, I don't hear much. I mean, I can hear that it's running. But those fans add to the noise too, plus the one on the processor. The graphics card is practically under no load, so those aren't running at the moment.
And we can see that despite 220, 230, 230W at this moment of load. The amount of noise generated is
Really, quite minimal under such a load. Bearable. Well, I could sleep without any problem with something like that.
The station draws in cool air through the openings at the very bottom of the front panel. It works a bit like a vacuum cleaner, sucking up everything from the floor, so be aware of that. And one more thing, but really a huge warning. Even though you can find guides online on how to unscrew the back panel to clean out the dust, doing this immediately and permanently breaks the 5-year manufacturer's warranty. Collect the dirt with a vacuum cleaner or carefully with compressed air, but only from the outside. But remember, before blowing, block the fan rotor, for example, with a bamboo stick. Otherwise, you'll spin it up to incredible speeds and destroy the bearing. The advantages of this device definitely include the excellent efficiency of the inverter, around 93%, and powerful power optimization on the DC ports. The revolutionary XT90 connector for van life enthusiasts. Long-lasting lithium iron phosphate cell chemistry. Huge capacity compared to its compact size. These are all major market advantages. In case of a power grid failure, this kind of equipment provides excellent home protection, keeping your refrigerator running, or other essential energy receivers. On the other hand, the biggest downside of the Elite 300, at least for some of you, could be its closed architecture. This station simply can't be expanded with additional battery modules. Of course, if someone needs that, the Apex 300 model might be a better choice for them. That one can be expanded to a huge size. As for me, I regret more that the station itself isn't somehow, at least basically waterproof. I was afraid to leave it under the panels on the balcony because you know how the weather is. You never know when it might drizzle. The next drawback concerns only the European model. Because this one has only 2 power sockets, especially since the version for the United States has 4. Of course, any extension cord will solve the problem, but still. I could also complain about the lack of wheels, but if you want them, the Elite 400 model has them. That one has them. It's true that it's a noticeably bigger station with a larger capacity, but it does have wheels and a handle, of course. To sum up, despite these few design compromises, the Bluetti Elite 300 is simply a piece of excellently designed engineering equipment, which delivers the parameters declared by the manufacturer without hesitation. If you're looking for a powerful energy reserve packed into the most compact housing possible, this is an option you won't be disappointed with. As always, you'll find all the links and best offers in the description below the video. Take care and see you in the next video.